There comes a moment, not loud, not announced, when something inside you shifts. It is not dramatic, not explosive, but it is undeniable. A subtle tremor deep beneath the surface of your identity. A breath you didn't realize you were holding exhales, and suddenly, the illusions no longer feel like home. You start to see it, not just the world, but yourself differently. The smiles you once offered now feel forced. The conversations, weightless. The rules you obeyed without question now seem absurd, almost insulting. It's as if you've been sleepwalking through someone else's script, and one morning, you finally open your eyes. But here's the tragedy they don't tell you. When you awaken, the world around you doesn't rejoice. It tightens. The moment your thoughts deepen, your presence starts to disturb. You don't even have to say anything. Your silence becomes too sharp. Your gaze too steady. Your boundaries too bold. Authentic change is a silent rebellion. Not because you shout, but because you stop bending. Not because you fight, but because you refuse to dance to the rhythm of the herd. And that refusal, it terrifies them. The more sovereign you become, the more others squirm in your presence. Not because you've hurt them, but because your mere existence begins to reflect what they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Their compromises, their borrowed beliefs, their unlived lives. They will not say this out loud, of course. They will hide it in jokes and sarcasm and advice masked as concern. They will ask if you're okay, not because they care, but because your change threatens the architecture of their comfort. Your mental evolution threatens their comfort zone. And no one enjoys confronting their own complacency. That's the paradox of real growth. The more alive you become, the more foreign you seem. And in a world addicted to sameness, to groupthink, to external validation, to be your own person is the ultimate betrayal. Perhaps you feel it now. That soft resistance in the air when you speak from your core. That shift in a friend's expression when you no longer entertain what once amused you. That silence in the room when you name something sacred, something raw and real. You've crossed an invisible line, one no one warned you about. Not in school, not in church, not in the culture that trained you to shrink for approval. But here's the truth. The individual must always struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try, you will often feel lonely and sometimes scared. But no price is too high to pay for possessing yourself. Nietzsche, possessing yourself. That is what this rebellion is about. You're not becoming rebellious to harm. You're becoming real to heal. You're not separating from others out of arrogance. You're separating from illusions out of reverence for your truth. And yet, that separation is costly. You lose the comfort of being understood. You lose the easy acceptance that conformity buys. You lose the applause from people who never truly knew you. But what you gain is holy. You begin to walk with a quieter mind. You begin to say no without guilt. You begin to feel your own gravity pulling you towards something unnameable, but profoundly yours. You begin to remember. Your life is not a negotiation. It is a declaration. Growth is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is a thinning of the veil between who you are and who you were pretending to be. It is remembering what you came here to become. And that remembering will cost you. It will cost you the version of yourself that made others feel safe. It will cost you your role in the tribe. It will cost you the mask of politeness you wore to keep peace at the expense of your own soul. But what is peace without sovereignty? What is belonging without truth? This is the silent rebellion. The act of becoming sovereign in a world that feeds on conformity. You are not here to be digestible. You are here to be whole. And wholeness has sharp edges. So if they say you've changed, smile, because you have. If they say you're distant, nod, because you are walking your own path. And if they say you've become hard to understand, thank them, because finally, you are no longer bending to be understood. You are becoming a mystery too vast to be summarized by small minds. A truly powerful mind is a threat to collective mediocrity. And collective mediocrity defends itself not with war, but with guilt, with shame, with silence. But you are no longer moved by such weapons, because you have chosen the path of the sovereign mind. Not because it is easy, but because you are done shrinking. You are not here to be tamed. You are here to rise. To rise will cost you, but it will be worth every scar, Because nothing is more painful than a life unlived in the name of false belonging. You are not who they want you to be. You are who you were born to become. And that becoming is your rebellion. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. Friedrich Nietzsche. There is a sacred moment in every real transformation, when everything you once trusted collapses. The illusions that held you like warm hands, gone. The beliefs that gave you comfort, crumbling. The identities you wore like armor, shattered at your feet. This is the fall, not into despair, but into truth. It is not punishment. It is passage. Because nothing alive is born without pain, and no real self is born without fire. You may be there right now, in that abyss, uncertain of who you are, unsure of what's coming, suspended between the ruins of who you were and the silhouette of who you could become. The world calls it crisis, but the philosophers knew better. Nietzsche knew better. This is your crucible. The chaos within you is not your enemy. It is your forge. Suffering, if you allow it, is alchemical. Not because it feels good, but because it strips away everything false. It is the harsh hand that unmasks you. The world teaches us to run from discomfort, to numb, to scroll, to distract, to deny. But the soul is stubborn. It does not evolve through convenience. It evolves through confrontation. When you sit with pain, really sit with it, you begin to hear its voice. And it says, this is the place you meet yourself. True strength is born when you face suffering without fleeing. When you stop asking for life to be easier and start wishing to be stronger. What if your chaos is not a curse, but a calling? What if the fire you're in is the birthplace of the self you've been chasing? Because the truth is this. The fall is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of your ascent. You cannot rise without first being torn open. You cannot become whole until you meet every piece of your brokenness with eyes that refuse to look away. Let go of the myth that growth looks graceful. It doesn't. Growth is violent. It is loud inside your silence. It demands you burn. But this fire is sacred. It is not here to destroy you. It is here to purify you, to remove what was never yours to carry, to expose the boundaries you never knew you needed, to show you the edge between what is true and what is taught. And at that edge, you begin to choose. You begin to say, this pain, it will not break me. It will remake me. Boundaries are born in fire. You begin to say no, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You begin to walk away, not because you hate, but because you finally love yourself enough to leave. The ones who mistook your silence for weakness now see it as a wall, not to shut out the world, but to protect your sacred space. Because when everything falls apart, you begin to learn what must never fall again. Suffering is not a mistake of existence. It is its main driving force. Nietzsche, he did not romanticize pain. He revered it. Not as something to dwell in, but as something to move through. You will not stay in the abyss forever, but the time you spend there will shape you in ways no comfort ever could. You will emerge, scarred, yes, but more sovereign than ever. And that sovereignty is power. This is not a path for those who seek validation. This is the path of becoming untouchable, not because you avoid pain, but because you no longer fear it. Not because you are hardened, but because you are anchored in a self that no longer negotiates its worth, anchored in a mind that does not crumble in the face of chaos, because it has learned to speak its language. When everything burns, what remains is your essence. When the noise is gone, what emerges is your voice. When the world turns silent, what begins to echo is your will to rise. This is the way of the phoenix. This is the way of the sovereign soul. Not born in sunlight, but in ash. And now, you know what the world does not tell you. That chaos is the door, and pain is the key. That you do not become powerful by avoiding the dark. You become powerful by walking into it and building light from your own bones. You do not need to be rescued. You need to be revealed. And the fire you are walking through, it is not your end. It is your rebirth. So burn and become new. Because in the next act, we will confront the moment where the world no longer holds meaning, where the old gods are dead, and the only authority left is the one rising within you. Stay close, because sovereignty begins when there is no one left to follow but yourself. The death of authority, becoming the center of meaning. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Friedrich Nietzsche. There comes a point in every inner revolution where the sky you used to pray to falls silent, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. The answers you once clung to dissolve like fog in the morning sun. The stories that comforted you, that explained your suffering, that gave your pain a reason, no longer hold. What once felt sacred now feels hollow. What once gave you certainty now binds you in doubt. This is not blasphemy. This is liberation. This is the moment you stop outsourcing your meaning. When Nietzsche said, God is dead, he was not mocking divinity. He was mourning the death of illusion. He was not killing God. He was killing dependency. He was killing the idea that someone else, some higher power, some system, some scripture, was responsible for the direction of your soul. Because so long as you believe someone else is writing your story, you will never pick up the pen. This is the rupture. When the sky no longer speaks, you must become the voice. When the rules no longer fit, you must become the law. No more commandments. No more borrowed codes of morality. No more waiting for permission to become who you already are. This is not the end of purpose. This is the birth of power. It is terrifying at first. The silence, the weight, the vast, cosmic responsibility of being your own center. There is no manual now, no higher judgment, no reward for suffering, no eternal applause. Only you, your will, your vision, your courage to shape the formless void into something sacred. With the death of God, Nietzsche wrote, we are left with the burden of freedom. And that burden is a fire, because now you must choose your values. You must shape your meaning. You must define what is worth living and dying for. You are no longer a follower. You are a creator. This is the essence of sovereignty, not arrogance, not rebellion for rebellion's sake. Sovereignty is the quiet, immovable stance of one who has claimed their life as their own. You no longer ask, is this allowed? You ask, is this worthy of me? You no longer ask, what is the rule? You ask, what is my truth? But here lies the pain. Most collapse under this freedom. Most beg for their chains back. Most would rather be told what to do than face the raw wilderness of radical autonomy. Because when you are your own compass, every step becomes a risk. There is no one to blame, no one to absolve you, no one to save you, but yourself. And that is where your true power awakens. Not when you are applauded, but when you are alone, terrified, and still choose to stand. That is the power the old systems feared. That is the mind. That cannot be controlled. There is no salvation, Nietzsche said. Only the overcoming of the self. This is the climb. This is the desert walk. This is where you build the internal spine to hold your own chaos without collapsing into despair. You do not follow meaning. You birth it. You do not inherit values. You forge them in your fire. You do not pray to be saved. You rise from the ruins and become your own answer. This is the death of authority and the birth of inner law. It is not loud. It does not shout. It simply stands with a gaze that no longer flinches, with a heart that no longer pleads, with a soul that no longer bows. And in that standing, the world changes. Because once you are no longer afraid to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to live for yourself, you become untouchable. Yes, it is heavy, but so is any crown made of truth. And you were not born to carry the lies of your culture. You were born to carve your own path through the wilderness of existence and say, this is mine. This is why Nietzsche's words still burn through time. Because he did not preach comfort. He preached self-responsibility so radical that it shatters the illusion of safety forever. And in its place, it offers you something better: power, presence, and the terrifying gift of becoming your own authority. So if the gods you once worshipped are silent, if the systems no longer hold, if the old truths taste like ash in your mouth, rejoice. You are being handed the rarest of keys, the key to your own kingdom. And now, you must learn to rule it. In the next act, we will meet the one who dares to rule himself. Not a tyrant, but the Übermensch, the human who lives beyond rules, guided only by his will to shape life into art. He is not just an idea. He is the future of every sovereign soul. And you, if you choose to rise, are already becoming him. The rise of the Übermensch, the human who cannot be broken. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. Friedrich Nietzsche. There is a figure in philosophy, so misunderstood, so feared, and yet so necessary to everything we are becoming. Nietzsche called him the Übermensch, the overman, the one who rises, not above others, but above himself, the one who no longer lives to be accepted, but to create, the one who no longer seeks approval, but to embody his truth, so fully that the world must shift around him. The Übermensch is not a superhero. He is a sovereign soul, one who creates his own values and lives by them. He is not born from privilege. He is born from pain, not shaped by applause, but by isolation, by inner war, by the slow, brutal process of burning everything that was not his, just to find the gold buried beneath it all. He does not follow morality. He births it. He does not live by the herd. He walks alone, and in doing so, creates a new path for others to follow. But here's the truth no one tells you. The Übermensch is not some far-off ideal. He is a potential that already stirs within you, a fire, long buried beneath your conditioning, a voice, quiet but unyielding, that whispers, there is more to you than this. To become him, you must break the mirror that reflects only who others need you to be. You must walk away from the systems that reward obedience and punish authenticity. You must stare into the faces of those who say you've changed and say back, yes, I was meant to. You must, in the most radical sense, become the edge that the world can no longer dull. Because what makes the Übermensch unbreakable is not his strength, it's his sovereignty. He is not unshaken because life is kind to him. He is unshaken because he no longer depends on life being kind. He walks into chaos with his eyes open. He speaks truths that make others uncomfortable. He exists, not to fit in, but to be. The rise of the Übermensch, the human who cannot be broken. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. Friedrich Nietzsche. There is a figure in philosophy, so misunderstood, so feared, and yet so necessary to everything we are becoming. Nietzsche called him the Übermensch, the overman, the one who rises, not above others, but above himself, the one who no longer lives to be accepted, but to create, the one who no longer seeks approval, but to embody his truth, so fully that the world must shift around him. The Übermensch is not a superhero. He is a sovereign soul, one who creates his own values and lives by them. Become a living embodiment of what it means to rise above fear, above conformity, above the psychological prison of needing to be liked. He frightens the world, not because he is cruel, but because he is free. And freedom, true psychological freedom, is the most terrifying thing a person can possess. Because when nothing owns you, you cannot be manipulated. When your worth is no longer tied to performance, to status, to applause, you become a mirror that exposes the hollowness in those who have not yet claimed themselves. The Übermensch does not adapt to the world, Nietzsche said. He imposes meaning on the world. He asks not, is this normal? But, is this worthy of me? He asks not, what will they think? But, does this align with the kingdom I am building within? And here, in this radical reorientation of the soul, is where your transformation begins. Because to live like this, you will have to kill the parts of you that still beg to belong, Beg to be chosen. Beg to be understood. This path will strip you. You will lose people. You will be called arrogant, intense, too much. And that's okay. You were not born to be understood by those who have not yet dared to understand themselves. To become unbreakable, you must become sacred in your solitude. You must stop apologizing for your depth, for your vision, for your power. The Übermensch does not shrink to fit the room. He is the room. He does not dull his light, so others feel comfortable. He lets it burn and invites others to catch fire. Most people cannot handle this path, Nietzsche warned. They return to the safety of the herd, and they will try to pull you back, with smiles, with silence, with sideways looks and hollow laughter. Not because they hate you, but because your freedom feels like judgment to those who are still caged, but do not return to the cage, just to make others feel better. Let them be uncomfortable. Let your very presence remind them of what they buried. You owe no one your obedience. You owe your soul its unfolding. This is the rise of the new human, not one shaped by the world, but one who shapes the world from the inside out. The Übermensch is not someone above others. He is someone who no longer needs to be above anyone. He does not dominate. He radiates. He does not shout. He embodies. He does not fight the old. He builds something so beautiful that the old crumbles. By comparison, you do not reach this place through perfection. You reach it through the fire, through the nights you wanted to quit, but didn't, through the betrayals that didn't break you, through the silence you learned to hold, like a throne, through the tears that no longer mean weakness, but warriorhood. This is how you rise, not above others, but into yourself. And when you do it, when you stand unbending, when you begin to embody the power you used to only imagine, you will disturb the world, not because you are loud, but because your presence now speaks in a language few are brave enough to understand. The language of self-possession, the language of sovereign silence, the language of one who has nothing left to prove. And now, as you begin to live on this edge, you must face one more truth. The higher you rise, the more alone you become, because most people are not building themselves. They are protecting a version of themselves they've never questioned. And that is why, in the next act, we will dive into the sacred solitude of the sovereign soul, because becoming unbreakable requires something deeper than strength. It requires the ability to walk alone and never lose your center. The solitude of the sovereign, walking alone without losing yourself. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche. There is a silence so profound, it becomes sacred. It is not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The kind that arrives when the noise of the world fades, and all that's left is you. Not the roles you play, not the mask you wear, not the story they wrote for you. Just you. Naked, unchosen, undistracted. This is not loneliness. This is solitude. There is a difference. Loneliness is a hunger. Solitude is a fullness that no one else can touch. Loneliness begs to be filled. Solitude whispers, "Stay. You are enough." And yet, most run from this place. They drown it out with noise, with validation, with constant movement. Because when all distractions fall away, they are forced to meet the one person they've spent years avoiding, themselves. But if you are serious about becoming unbreakable, you must stop running, because it is only in solitude that you meet your real voice. It is only in aloneness that your truth becomes clear. It is only in the silence that you finally hear the roar you've been suppressing for years. Real growth requires space, and space requires solitude. There is no way around this. The herd will not understand it. Your old self will resist it. But you must enter the desert, not to suffer, but to see what still owns you, to see where your identity is borrowed, to see how many of your thoughts are not your own, This is the sacred disconnection. Before the sovereign reconnection, you lose the world. To gain your soul, you walk away from comfort. To find the unshakable ground beneath you, you remove the noise. To hear your own command with divine clarity. But it is not easy. You will be misunderstood. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant. They will say, "You've changed." And you will smile and say, "Yes, I burned the version of me that was built to please you." You will hear echoes of voices you once trusted, trying to pull you back. You will be tempted to return to the familiar cage, not because it fits, but because it's easier to explain. But here is the truth. The cage is not your home. It never was. It was a place to be safe, not sovereign. It was a place to be liked, not liberated. And the moment you feel yourself expanding into your own boundaries, your own thoughts, your own becoming, you will know you cannot go back. Solitude is not a punishment. It is a purification. It strips away the noise until what's left is essence. It burns off false attachments until all that remains is the golden root of who you truly are. This is why the strongest minds are the most alone, not because they hate people, but because they love truth more than comfort. The free spirit, Nietzsche wrote, must endure the pain of isolation. But in that pain, he becomes who he is. Do not fear the silence. Step into it. Let it break you, if it must. For on the other side of that break is where sovereignty begins. This is where boundaries become sacred, not walls of defense, but lines of definition. You learn where you end, and the world begins. You stop absorbing everyone's energy. You stop justifying your preferences. You stop betraying your instincts to keep someone comfortable. You say no without guilt. You say yes only when it honors your soul. You become a force, not because you fight, but because you refuse to abandon yourself. And slowly, you begin to realize this solitude was never empty. It was full of the power you kept outsourcing to others. It was full of the vision you suppressed to belong. It was full of the self you were always becoming. Yes, this path cost you people. Yes, it cost you applause. But what it gives you is irreplaceable. Self-possession, emotional invincibility, psychological immunity. You no longer wait for someone to crown you. You wear your solitude like a kingdom. And once you stand in that kingdom, clear, silent, sovereign, you begin to see. You see the patterns, the systems, the mediocrity that thrives on dependency. And you realize your silence is your rebellion. Your presence is your weapon. Your refusal to be domesticated is the most sacred revolution you could ever lead. This is the paradox. The more alone you become, the more you begin to see clearly. And with that clarity comes confrontation, not with enemies, but with collective mediocrity, the quiet poison that keeps the masses small. And that is where we go next. Because if solitude gives you power, then the world will respond to that power, not with celebration, but with resistance. The crowd does not pursue the average. It pursues the one who dares to rise. In Act 6, we step into that confrontation now, not to fight, but to understand the deep psychological fear that strength awakens in the world, and why your strength, if you are not careful, will make you a target. The war against brilliance, how collective mediocrity tries to break the exceptional. The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. Friedrich Nietzsche, you've walked through fire. You've claimed your solitude. You've carved your own boundaries into the fabric of the world. And now, you shine, not with arrogance, but with presence. Not by demanding attention, but by refusing to betray yourself. And for that very reason, you become a threat, not because you harmed anyone, but because your strength exposes what others have refused to become. True tyranny, Nietzsche warned, does not come from above. It comes from the sides, from the crowd that demands you stay small, so they don't have to rise. This is the war few speak of, the war not fought with fists, but with glances, not with weapons, but with whispers, not with bullets, but with social pressure. It's the war against brilliance, the war against sovereignty. You see it in the quiet disapproval, in the sarcasm, in the polite advice laced with resentment. You've changed. Don't take things so seriously. You think you're better than us now? They say it with a smile, but underneath, it's fear. Fear of your liberation. Because your rise means they must confront their own stagnation. When you step beyond the mold, you threaten the tribe's illusion of safety. You break the silent contract. Stay like us, so we don't have to grow. But you didn't come here to fit in. You came here to evolve, to burn, to build, to become something untouchable. Slave morality, Nietzsche called it. The inversion of values by the weak, where strength becomes arrogance, independence becomes selfishness, and power becomes cruelty. But it is not compassion that drives this inversion. It is resentment. Resentment for those who dared to escape the cage. They do not want to be saved. They want the strong to be broken. Because if you fall, they don't have to rise. If you shrink, they don't have to stretch. If you apologize for your light, they don't have to face their darkness. So they come, not with rage, but with seduction, with the sweet voice of conformity, with the passive-aggressive comment, with the unspoken tension that punishes difference. This is how collective mediocrity survives. By emotional sabotage. It does not kill the strong. It pressures them into killing themselves, into hiding, into apologizing, into softening their voice, until it no longer echoes. But you must not fall for this. You must recognize it for what it is. Not personal, not malicious, just unconscious. A desperate cry from those who've never met their true selves. You do not hate them, but you do not join them. You love them from a distance, because your first loyalty is to the self you are becoming. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you arrogant. Let them whisper in rooms you've outgrown. You don't need the room anymore. You are the room. You are the cathedral you've been waiting to worship in. And your brilliance? It's not decoration. It's declaration. A statement to the world. I will not dim to soothe your fear. This is the price of becoming exceptional. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will disturb comfort, but you will awaken courage. You will walk alone, but you will no longer feel lonely. Because solitude, now, is your sanctuary. Your boundaries are your temple, and your sovereignty is the throne you built with your own scars. He who has a why to live, Nietzsche said, can bear almost anyhow. And now, you have your why, not given to you by a system, a religion, a culture, a crowd, but forged in the core of your being. It was not handed to you. You bled for it, burned for it, broke for it, and because of that, no one can take it from you. You are no longer a mirror, reflecting others' desires. You are the flame that reveals the shape of truth. You are no longer a product of who they said you should be. You are the author of your own becoming. You are no longer waiting for permission. You have claimed your sovereign silence. And in that silence, you have become untouchable. This is the final threshold. The world will still try, but it can no longer reach you. You are no longer controlled by applause. You are no longer paralyzed by rejection. You are no longer a slave to the script. You are presence. You are principle. You are power. Not power over others, but power over your own energy. Not dominance, but definition. Not controlled, but clarity. And now, with all illusions burned, you return to the world, not to belong to it, but to transform it, simply by being unalterably yourself. You don't preach. You walk. You don't convince. You embody. You don't ask for the world to understand. You become so radiant, they are forced to question. Everything they've accepted is real. You are no longer a student of the system. You are a sovereign soul, a philosopher of presence, a quiet fire that cannot be put out. This is the end of your former self, and the beginning of the one who cannot be manipulated. coerced, or domesticated. This is the silent crown you wear now. The cost was high, but the reward is everything. You have become unshakable,